Nice to meet you too.
Great. Have a seat.
Thanks.
All right, everyone, very welcome to Mentour and yet another video podcast. I hope you're all doing fantastic as always. So today I have a special treat for you guys. Today I have with me Stein, who is working for Scandinavian Aviation Academy. And I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm the Director of Marketing at Scandinavian Aviation Academy and a flight instructor. Started my flying career in 2008, moved to the US and became a flight instructor over there. Most of my flying in Florida and on the West Coast in California, and that's where I started working for SAA.
Cool. So, as I mentioned in my previous video, I was going to meet up with a flight school, and here I am, and you guys have been providing me with a lot of good questions. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to fire away some of the questions, of some of the biggest or most common questions that you guys had from the channel, and then I will be just following up to whatever answers I get from Stein. So to start off, Stein, what kind of training do you do? What kind of courses do you do here?
Well, our main focus is integrated programs for fixed wing, so for airplanes. We also do helicopter training and modular courses as well, such as MCC courses and jet orientation courses and ATPL theory and the such. But our main focus is integrated programs for fixed wing.
Okay, so your integrated program, if we start with that one, how long does it take more or less?
Well, we actually have 3 integrated programs. One of them is in Sweden, and it's government sponsored. That program takes 2 years. It's 18 months of flight training and then 6 months of an internship at an airline. So after the students are gone or done with their flight training, they go to one of the airlines and they do a 6-month internship period there.
Okay.
The other 2 integrated programs we have, one of them is also in Sweden, but without the internship. It's called the First Officer Program, and it's self-sponsored. And then we have one integrated program that is done mainly in the United States, in San Diego, where we have our satellite base.
Okay, so you're doing 3 different integrated programs. Now, obviously what spikes my interest here is the government-sponsored program. So can anyone apply to the government-sponsored program?
Well, here's the deal. If you want to apply to the Swedish government-sponsored program, you need to be able to read, speak, and understand Swedish, because a lot of the training is done in Swedish. There are 20 spots available each year, but if you are from one of the other Nordic countries, you can also apply. So say if you're from Norway or Denmark, you can apply to this program. But if you've gone to high school in Norway or Denmark, you need to convert your grades to the Swedish equivalent, which can be done by going to a website called uhr.se.
Okay.
And send in your grades, and they will do the process for you.
Okay, perfect. So when we're talking on the subject of grades, something that a lot of my viewers are asking is what kind of academical levels do they need to have in order to apply to any of the integrated or modular courses?
That's a very good question. As a prerequisites, when it comes to academia, we require that you've completed high school and that you have grades in mathematics, English, and physics. Now, depending on what country you're from, the different levels of the different subjects vary slightly. But I usually, if you want to explain it in a simple way, you don't need to have engineering level math, but maybe the step below that would be sufficient. But you need to have math, physics, English, because those are extremely important for you to be able to study all the 14 subjects in the ATPL theory. You need to have the basic understanding to be able to build on that knowledge. And English, obviously, is important, even though the Swedish program is done in Swedish. Once you got into the world, radio communication is in English. You're working in an environment with people from a lot of different countries.
Yeah, well, obviously the English level is going to be assessed, and it needs to be at least level 4 in order for you to be able to apply to any airline that works within any part of the airline industry, really. Right, so we've talked about the academic part. What about suitability? Because I talk a lot in my podcast about the need to be properly checked before you start your flight training. As a school, what's your policy when it comes to that kind of checking?
That's a very important point. We do pilot aptitude tests for all of our applicants, which is a prerequisite for any of our programs to be able to do training here.
Okay.
And basically, I usually explain it like this. We're doing it both for ourselves to ensure that we're getting good quality student, but it's also for the applicant's sake to make sure that you have all the foundation, the basic skills that's required to go through the program and later on to thrive as a professional pilot and land your first job.
What about if let's say that you fail the aptitude tests in the first stage? Is it all over then, or what's the policy?
It's not all over. Sometimes we have applicants who are not able to pass the bar on the first attempt. They might be young, or there might be other things that they could, they're not fully developed yet. If that's the case and you fail a pilot aptitude test on the first attempt, you have a quarantine of 6 months, and then you can come back and try again.
Okay. Is there any way to kind of prepare for these aptitude tests?
Absolutely, yeah. I would say brush up on your math skills, especially if it's been a long time since you graduated from high school. Go through that high school level of math and try to work on your mental arithmetics. You can work on your mental arithmetics, in day-to-day life. There are applications for it. You could do something as simple as when you go grocery shopping, you just add up all the prices for the different groceries, and then you get the answer when you're in the register. Just keep your mind fresh, so to speak.
I would say that that's probably a very good suggestion, guys, because I know that a lot of you have been asking for ways to prepare for these tests. There are loads of these tests available. You can find, if you go out and you Google aptitude tests, you will find it on the internet. You can practice all of these arithmetics. Just make sure that your math skills are at a adequate level. So now, what about costs? Because this, if there's one question that I'm getting a lot, and understandably so, is how can you afford it? First of all, what kind of costs? How much does an integrated course, or your 3 or your 2 integrated courses that are self-sponsored cost?
Well, our integrated program in the United States that's done 12 months there and then in Sweden cost, it's going to be a price increase shortly to 890,000 Swedish kroners.
So that will be about 95,000 euros, so 93,000 euros, something?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a pretty substantial investment, which is another great reason for going through pilot aptitude tests before you start the training, because then I can do this. It's a big investment. It's a really big decision to make, and it's not a profession, where you go into it and you're kind of, well, maybe I want to be a pilot. You need to be dedicated, motivated, ambitious, and know that this is what you want, because it's going to take some hard work.
Like 93,000 euros is an enormous mountain of money. Okay. Or do you guys have any kind of financing deal available?
It actually depends a little bit on which country you're from.
Okay.
Swedish applicants, they get financial aid that covers, I would say, more than 1/3 of the cost, so around 340,000 kroners. And on top of that, they get monthly payments to cover living expenses and food and the likes. However, if you're a Norwegian applicant, you don't get any financial aid, unfortunately, the way it is today. If you're from Denmark, they assess the applications on an individual basis,
Okay.
is the way I understand it. When it comes to other European countries, I'm not completely sure about the financing options in the different countries, but what I would encourage people to do is to try, and if you have the option to do so, save up money. I financed my own flight training that way. I had my own company like you, and was able to save up a lot of money, sold off the company, and then went on to do flight training. And I got away with a fairly small loan on top of that. So that's one way to do it. I know other people who've applied for grants. For example, if a wealthy person has passed away and doesn't have any heirs, sometimes they create a fund which you can apply for to cover parts of the training. There's ways to help you with the financing, but you have to be creative, and it takes some research and some work.
Yeah, all right. Right, let's say that you have amassed this mountain of money that is needed.
Yep.
What if you go through the training and at some point during the training you run into obstacles? It might be training related, or it might be personally related, something like that. Is there any way, is it paid as one go, or is it divided into modules, or how does it work?
We divide it up into different semesters.
Okay.
So It's an 18-month training program for the integrated program, so we divide it up into 3 payments or 3 installments.
Okay. Is there any way to get the money back in case something would happen?
Yeah, you'll get the money back for the semesters that you haven't paid for if you abort the training before that point. And obviously, you know, if you jump off somewhere halfway in between, we'd refund you for the training cost not done.
Okay, so basically the training that you've done, that is already gone. Those money are spent.
Yes.
Which is probably another reason why I always keep pressing guys that, you know, you have to do these aptitude tests, like you have to do these suitability tests, because if it turns out midway through the training that you actually are not suitable for doing this, so for whatever reason you don't have the mental capacity or the skills needed, then you know you might end up with having spent a lot of money that will go to waste. So make sure that you do these aptitude tests. Make sure that the school that you're going to does it, and if they don't, you should do it yourself before you start any type of flight training. What about getting your first job? Right, here is another one of my viewers' biggest questions. When you're done with the training, how many hours do you have, more or less?
Around 260.
Around 260 hours. How do you find or get your first job with that kind of...
This is a really great question. I mean, one of the things that I speak mostly to people about is the same thing, the job market. What does it look like? And right now, it looks really, really good. There's going to be a need for 104,000 pilots in Europe in the next 20 years. And a lot of the major airlines are reporting that they have a lot of pilots who are retiring. I also stress the point, however, when I go out and talk to people, is that I could be saying the same thing in June 2001.
Yeah.
The recruitment was on the rise, and then something unexpected happened, the terrorist attacks of 9/11. And the day after, the runway at Arlanda was full of parked airplanes. Swiss Air went bankrupt. Had a tremendous impact on the industry. And just, you know, any one of us could try to guess the future, and we could look at the stats and the facts, and it's looking really good now, but it could also change. So what we're trying to do when it comes to those kind of things, because flying, it's not quite like riding a bike. You need to keep it fresh. If you stop doing it consistently for several years, you're not going to be as marketable. So the way that we try to kind of safeguard our students against that is that we're starting to implement what's called career support, which basically means that after they graduate, they can come back here. We'll let them use the simulator. We'll sit down with them and work on their resumes. We'll work on their personal letters. We'll try to look what's out there, what's in the market for them. And more importantly, you know, try to really make sure that they stay prepared for that first job interview.
Right, another question that comes up very frequently on my channel is it beneficial to have a university degree or the equivalent of a university degree in order to get into flight schools to start with, and in order to get a job after the flight school?
Well, it's not a prerequisite to be accepted at our flight school that you have a university degree. However, I know some airlines, they require that you have one. I think it's more common in the United States if you compare it to Europe. But with that being said, you know, it's not a disadvantage. You know, you've gone through a higher level of education. The disadvantage might be that you'll have to start 3 years later or 5 years later, depending on if you do a bachelor or a master's degree. But on the flip side, you have something to fall back on.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think it's a bad idea.
Okay. Now, talking about the differences between the United States, the FAA rules and the EASA rules. Let's say that you've taken your licenses in America under the FAA rules. How do you go about converting your licenses if you want to come back to Europe?
Well, the program that we have in the US is actually a European program. So when they come back, they do the skill test and they get all the European licenses. But if, like you described, if you go to the United States and you get American licenses and then you want to return to Europe, you can do what's called an EASA conversion course. Basically, you know, you send in a request to a flight school. For us, you send it in online. And what we do is that we look at the information you give us, your amount of hours, what licenses you have, the recency of your experience, and based on that information we put together a tailored training program that then results in skill tests that will give you the European licenses.
Okay, do you have to do all the theoretical examinations?
Well, that's a good point. Yes, you also need to do the ATPL theory exams.
All the 14 exams?
Yes, all the 14 exams.
What's the approximate cost, more or less? If you
I would say for the ATPL theory, I think it's 40,000 Swedish kroners.
Okay, and but for the whole conversion, I mean, if you're taking from the FAA?
The whole conversion, that would depend on how much experience you have. If you've been a flight instructor in the United States and you've racked up quite a bit of hours and you come back home fresh with a lot of recent experience, the cost is going to be substantially lower than if you've just gone through a training program and you've got 250 hours and you come back home.
Okay.
So that's going to affect the price.
You have 250 hours, more or less, cost?
Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, honestly. Okay. I'll have to look that up.
All right, so ask that questions in the comments, guys.
Yeah, I can answer in the comments. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.